ASPE, exercise physiology. Topic is around diet and nutrition, and we're looking at energy intake, expenditure, and energy balance in physical activity and performance. Okay, before we start, it's important to know that everybody's diet, whether you're an athlete or whether you're somebody who lives a sedentary lifestyle, is very different. Every athlete and every performer has different nutritional needs, so there's no diet that works for everybody. So it's really important that performers meet the energy needs during the various periods of training programs to improve their performance and maintain a good health. Because failure to consume the correct amount of calories needed to exercise can result in things like muscle loss or muscle atrophy, decreased intensity and duration of performance, slower recovery rates, an increase in risk of fatigue, an increase in risk in injury, and an increase on risk of illness. These are the key terms that you're going to need to really and thoroughly understand. Energy expenditure, basal metabolic rate, thermic effect of food, energy intake, energy expenditure, the metabolic equivalent, and the energy balance. And this is for you to now research. And hopefully we will cover some of these words throughout this short presentation. So energy expenditure is the sum of our basal metabolic rate, our BMR, and the thermic effect of food, as well as the energy expended in physical activity. And our basal metabolic rate is the rate at which the body uses energy at rest. So energy at rest. So just as we're sitting now watching this video clip. So the thermic effect of food is energy expenditure. So the energy expenditure above resting metabolic rate, but this is due to the cost of processing food for use and storage. So for use and storage. So basically, after we've ate, we're still maybe at rest, but also now we are having to use more calories because of the thermic effect of food to process this food and store this food, which goes back to last week looking at how the cells divide, etc., through the use of carbohydrates. And then finally, we're looking at the energy expended during physical activity. So how much energy we expend, we use where we are exercising. So the more accurate a picture of an individual's energy expenditure, the more precise we can create a diet to suit the individual needs and to ensure that that person achieves the correct amount of energy intake. So the physical activity expenditure is the total number of calories that's required to perform daily tasks. So in other words, how many calories is needed to walk, to climb a set of stairs, to run, to play a particular sport or take part in any physical activity. And somebody's total energy expenditure, 30% would be seen through physical activity. So 30% of our energy expenditure would come from physical activity, but that could vary depending on the level of training and the type of athlete that we're talking about. Another word that we really need to know is the metabolic equivalent values, or other words, MET, and it's defined as 1 kilocalorie per kilogram per hour, and is roughly the equivalent to the energy cost of sitting quietly. So if we sat quietly, you would use 1 kilocalorie per hour, and this is what's used to build a precise picture of energy expenditure associated with different activities. So if we sat quietly, completely relaxed for an hour, that activity would have a met value of 1. Physical activity guidelines have identified different sports and the met value of that activity. So if you were run at 200 watts, it would have a met value of 12, which would therefore emphasise that it's a strenuous activity that burns a high number of calories. Circuit training, depending on the type, would have a met value of 8, and ice skating would have a met value of 7. So again, remember that it's 1 kilocalorie per kilogram of body mass per hour, and that is the equivalent to an oxygen uptake of 3.5 millilitres per kilogram per minute. Again, energy intake, something that should be pretty obvious, is the total amount of energy from food and beverages that are consumed, and this is measured in joules or calories. And remember that we mentioned last week that the recommended diet for an average individual is important for health, and 55% of energy intake should come from carbohydrates, which are our main source of energy, particularly starch. 15% should come from proteins, those amino acids, which are important for growth and repair, and 30% fats, and ideally unsaturated fats. But again, like with all diets, this can vary depending on the athlete. So here we've got somebody who's in the Tour de France. Their diet is going to have to be considerably different to a track cyclist. And you've got just a basic understanding of the key terms and how this links to diet and nutrition. Now, although I appreciate this might be a little bit complex, the idea of this is just to give you some basic understanding of some of these terms. An energy balance is the relationship between energy intake, so how much food we're consuming, how much energy are we processing, and actually how much energy are we expending and are we using. And it's these little scales at the opposite side that are there to tell the picture. So if energy, so if we're looking at this one here, if energy input or intake matches the expenditure, weight will stay the same. So you can see that the scale is quite straight, therefore there's no more intake than there is expenditure, and our weight will stay the same. If we're looking at the second one, the picture tells a different story. And herefore we're saying if energy intake is lower, so we can see that the amount of energy that we're intaking is low, and energy expenditure is higher, this would result in weight loss, which might be beneficial as part of a weight loss program, but might have to be carefully monitored in other athletes due to a loss of muscle mass, which could affect performance. And then finally, this last balance, which is the opposite way around. If energy intake is bigger and calorie output and energy output is low, weight would be gained, and that would therefore increase the percentage of body fat, which could have a negative effect on not only our health but also our performance. So hopefully we've covered